Good day to everybody joining us, seeing the comments rolling in from all around the world. It's a great day to be alive, a great day to get together, and we're excited to have you participating in the broadcast with us this morning. I am joined by some friends. I've got Brian, who's with me here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and Irene, who is a little bit further away across the ocean in the British Isles, but joining us with her nearness of spirit and like-mindedness. So we're excited to release this morning to you what we hear the Lord saying. Before we get into that, I want to make mention of a couple important announcements. That first of all, we are having our first Awaken the Dawn prayer meeting on Monday morning at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, so 1 p.m. in the British Isles, I believe that is. And there's a link if you go over to the Invictus Prophetic Global page. You can check that out and sign up to participate with that. So it's going to be amazing. Something brand new that we're launching. And as you know, prophets love to pioneer. And so we invite you to be a part of that. And then secondly, as many of you know, I'm the director of the Academy. And for those of you that don't, well, that's news to you. So I am the director of the Invictus Global Prophetic Academy. And we just completed our first year, and we are taking registration for our next year. So we have a 3-year program. So our year 1 students that graduated are moving into year 2. And so we have openings for year 1 again. So go to our website. You can check out what's needed. You can apply, and we will get back to you. But we are doing an intake, so we want to invite you. I can guarantee you will be challenged. You will be sharpened. You will be encouraged. I really believe that you will find out some pieces about who you are as a prophet, and some things are going to come together and make sense for you in your life. So we encourage you to join us and also find your tribe. The students that have gone through the first year have built relationship with each other, love the community, and there's just power in that, and finding your mates as prophets that you can do life with and continue to sharpen and encourage each other. So well, there you have it. That's the latest news. I'm going to get Brian to just say a quick greeting this morning. So over to you, Brian.
Yeah, hello, everybody. I'm Brian. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the center. I'm a retired man, and been working in the prophetic now for about 6 or 7 years, and really enjoying it, and looking forward to a lot of the things that God has in store for us, and really striving to be part of that and help that grow. So that's where I'm about.
Excellent. So good to have you with us. Irene, I'm going to let you say a greeting.
Yes, hello everybody. So I'm Irene. I am French, but I live in the UK, and yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Talking about my prophetic story. So I'm part of a group of fun prophets called the British Isles Council of Prophets, and I also teach at the Invictus Academy, which is great fun. So yeah.
Yes, we love having you as one of our teachers. So if you decide to join the Academy, you are going to see more of Irene, and we love Irene and what she carries. She is a prophet who will sharpen you and challenge your thinking. So, all right, we're excited to gather together. We had some great conversation in the green room, as my tongue is tied, this morning. And so, Brian, I'm going to ask you to begin this morning with what you're carrying. So over to you.
Okay, well, Lord's put it on my heart. We've been hearing a lot of prophecies about what's going to happen in the near future. A lot of events in the world that are being changed, and God's got a plan for all this, and we want to be a part of that. But to be a part of it, we have to have our own vision of what our promised land is, and we have to understand what it is. We have to know where that is, or so we can strive for that. And I was reading in the Old Testament in the first 5 books, and I was studying what the Israelites did when they came out of Egypt. And when they came out of Egypt, some of them, the Lord told them that they were going to go to the Promised Land, but they had to get there. And some of the people rebelled, and they wanted to go back to to what they knew. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They understood that. They knew that. They knew where they were, and they couldn't envision the promised land. They couldn't envision it. They couldn't get an idea what that would be like for them. They were more comfortable with what they knew, with what they were familiar with, and so they wanted to go back to that. There was another group that when they got to the Jordan, they were satisfied with what the country around there. They had cattle, and that country was good for cattle, so they wanted to stay there. They wanted to stay on the east side of the Jordan and raise their cattle. There was the family of Reuben, the Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and they wanted to stay there because that was what they envisioned the promised land to be. Was this is where we can feed our cattle. This is a great place, and the Lord gave them that. Yes, that was okay. The Lord will give you what you desire, but what was in the promised land, is it better? I think sometimes we can get comfortable with our own lives, like the first group. There's a way of life and a way of doing things that we understand, we're comfortable with. We're not we're afraid to go out and strive for the things that are maybe difficult, maybe hard. We have to conquer things. That could be too. Let's just go back to what I know. I know I'm comfortable there. I know I can get by. I understand that. So let's go there. Or with the people like Gad and Reuben, they have their own vision of what the promised land looks like, and this is good enough. This is what I see, and this is what God must see too. This is the promised land. This is as good as it's going to get. So let's go for that. They substitute their own vision of what this promised land is compared to what the Lord actually has in store for us. He has a plan for our lives. He has a future for us that we can only imagine sometimes. But I guess what I'm trying to say is let's try to figure out what that individual promised land is for each one of us. Do we want to be in danger of being like the Israelites and living out our full lives without ever getting to the future that God has for us, the plan that He has? We want to just die of old age in the desert before we get there. Like the only two people that got to see the promised land were Joshua and Caleb. Nobody else made it. They all stayed in the desert. And let's strive to see what this promised land is. Let's try to envision it. Let's listen. Let's get more prophetic going on in our own lives to find out what that promised land is. Let's listen to this. Let's find out what God has for us. Let's strive for that. Let's do that, because that's going to be better than what we can imagine or what we are living in now. And that's basically what my word is. Let's try to find out what that promised land is. What does it look like for us individually? Which each one is going to be different. What is that? How do we find there? And let's strive to get there.
Yeah, so much there. You're just challenging me with this. And I just really felt the Spirit of the Lord saying, don't settle. Don't settle. I think that's the underlying theme. Don't settle. And the Lord will shake things underneath our feet to cause us to have to move forward. And we always have a choice. We were just talking in the green room. We are given choice. That's a gift. We can choose to move. We can choose to stay stuck. We can choose to go backwards, right? Like we can choose to pine for the days of Egypt, where even though it was so oppressive and so destructive, it's what we know, and we can revert back to old patterns, old habits. But I hear the Lord saying, don't settle. And so one of the things I was just thinking as Brian was talking was, how do we know what our promised land is? Some of us may know, or like, I'm going this direction because this is the promised land I'm headed towards. And others of you maybe are like, I don't know. I know there is such a thing as the promised land because I've heard it talked about in the Bible and it sounds all good and amazing, but what is my promised land? And just a key into discovering that is look at the prophetic words that God has given you. What are some things that have been spoken over your life? There will be some clues in there as to the direction and the nature and where you're headed and what God has for your destiny. And that is a way that even if you're not 100% certain of what that looks like, you can begin to pray into it, and you can extract some of those things and begin to prophesy over yourself, over your destiny, by partnering with those prophetic words and really unpacking then what God has. What is the promised land? We all know we're called to a promised land. And I was just thinking, even like very practically, to kind of let you in on a bit of my journey. We've all been on this crazy journey the last few years, since COVID really impacted all of us globally. But then even in the backdrop of that is there's all our personal lives of things going on that we were walking through before that or have happened since then. And just the fact that like God is wanting to take us deeper, wanting to take us farther in these things. And so he was really inviting me into this place of saying, Erin, I want your yes. And I know this is not like a new word. We've all heard the word. God wants our yes as prophets. He's looking for our yes. But he said to me very specifically, he said, I'm inviting you in this season. And this was back in early 2020. He said, I'm inviting you in this season to be like Abraham. I am going to take you to your promised land. He used that word. He said, I'm going to take you to your promised land, even though you don't know specifically where it is and the time frame. But if you give me your yes, I will take you there. And so I thought, okay, God, you have my yes. And boy, has it been a journey. And I haven't regretted saying yes, but it has been a challenge where I'm like, God, what is this yes costing me? There's a lot of investment and a lot at stake. And so the challenge is to continue to revisit that and not pull out and not settle, right, Brian? It's so easy to go back in the process of the journey to say, I've come far enough. I'm settling here. I'm going to pitch a tent and I'm just going to make this like where I'm going to stay. And God is saying, no, don't be short-sighted. Like, this is the bigger picture, right? Irene, I'd like you to come in and add some thoughts to this.
Yeah, really ties in with what God has been speaking to me about. I feel like we are coming into something like a Jericho moment, where we're going to have to contend and we also have to demolish. And there's something that I really like. So we'll have to contend for the promise, but there's also a number of lies that we are going to have to demolish because they keep us away from the promise. They keep us away from the heart of God. And we need to know how to fight. What I really like about how the Israelites took Jericho is that they walked around it for 6 days, so 6 days in complete silence. And then they celebrated their victory on the 7th day. And they knew that the victory was going to happen anyway. So like, this was not, wait for it type moment. Like the victory was happening and they had it already because they knew that God had given them the promised land. But there's power in silence, in walking around in silence. And I believe that God is inviting us to just reappropriate the power of silence over our lives. And we were joking about it in the green room because, prophets, we can talk for days. But actually, there's value in our silence, in our just like taking time. And there's a power in the silence. There's vulnerability in the silence. There's closeness in the silence. And I believe that God is inviting us to kind of reclaim the power of silence over our lives, to use it to contend, but also to demolish.
Absolutely. And that is not an easy thing to do, to remain silent. I think it's a learned thing. It's a learned thing. I don't think by nature, I mean, some of us tend to be more quiet. We may be more introverted. And so we sometimes maybe need that push to speak. But if you feel something that's on your heart and you need to stand up and you're like, I need to speak up, like this is something burning inside of me, we tend to release before we've necessarily like processed it and spent time, marinating in it. And I think for us prophets who get to be chomping at the bit and we want to release the word of the Lord, or we want to find our platform, we want to find our place, we're very quick to vocalize. And it's interesting because I have been in a season of silence. Actually, it's so weird because the Lord started speaking to me about silence about 4 or 5 years ago. He just said, I want you to turn the radio off while you're driving. I do a lot of driving and I live in the country. So I just started to say, okay, God, I'm going to make my automobile a place of worship. And I just started praying in tongues and just actually being in silence, not even thinking, teaching my brain to dial down and not have to constantly be going, and then tuning into what does the Holy Spirit want to say. Sometimes it's that whisper that I'm going to miss if I'm so busy. And he started to teach me a different way to worship through silence. And for those of you that know me, I'm a worship leader. So what my norm was to look for the newest song, keep my ear open for the latest sound, to always be releasing that. And silence for me was something I had to learn. And then I met Stephen Cummins when him and Rebecca traveled to Winnipeg one time a few years ago. And Stephen started to speak about silence being the new language and the new sound. And I thought, okay, God is wanting to do something. So Erin has really like tapped into something that I think is a now word. We're not finished with this at all. And God wants to teach us as prophets to cultivate silence. And I believe sometimes it's a greater struggle to stay quiet when we feel like we have something to release than actually just release it and give what we're carrying. And I think that the Lord wants to teach us how to steward words and how to carry the weight of it and maybe get to even understand it at a greater level before we go releasing things. Brian, do you have any thoughts on that at all? Because this can be a very controversial subject and not easy for us as prophets, especially when we're trained up to use your voice, right? But what does it look like? Using our voice, I don't believe is always vocalizing necessarily. There's other demonstrations of how we can use our voice. So Brian, come on in.
Silence, a lot of times, when we're a bit too busy talking, we're not listening. And I think a lot of times God speaks to us through the silence, through the things, and we're more open to hear without the noise that we're creating. We're creating our own noise that overpowers what the Lord is trying to do, and what we're, and it gets to be like the people like the Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe Manasseh that, they had their own vision. We have our own thoughts and our own things, and we're so busy talking and doing stuff that we're not listening to what God has and what his plan is. And so, that's how I look at that is, sometimes it's better just to be quiet, listen, understand what's going on. And a lot of times by saying things, we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble when we're speaking our own mind and our own thoughts and our own stuff. And a lot of times, you say stuff, you say it wrong, you say it in the wrong way, and you cause more damage than the power of the tongue. You've heard that. So, silence. There's something to be said. Just let's let God work. Let him enlighten you, and be silent and pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that comment that just came up too. What noise am I creating rather than listening? Yeah, that's exactly it. We can be a bunch of noise. Yeah. And I know that we need to learn to avoid the distractions, not get caught up in the chatter. And I think, listening is really key, right? Like, are we listening? Are we hearing? You can be in a conversation with somebody and you can be quiet and you can be listening, but your brain can be going and you can miss half of what they're saying to you. And I'm guilty of that as a mom at times. My kids have been busy telling me about their day and my brain is over here thinking of all the other things I have to do. And then they'll say, "What do you think, Mom?" And I'm like, "Huh?" Like, I just missed everything they said. And I'm like, I was physically present, but I wasn't present. And I think that there's this thing of presence. The Lord wants to teach us how to be present with him in the silence. Erin, do you have some keys that you're able to give and share?
I hope so. God took me on an interesting journey of silence. I thought I was good at it because I'm an introvert and I live on my own. And the first thing that I do when I come home is that when I come home from work, there's complete silence in my house for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. But actually, my brain was still working and my heart was still making noises. And I feel like God took me on a journey to silence my heart noise. So whatever prevents me to just being with him, because you can be completely silent and still not be there. And I really like the comfort that you get. You know, you've got those friends that you can sit next to and you don't have to talk and it's okay. And I felt like God was inviting me on a journey where we're just going to sit together. We're not going to say anything and it's going to be okay. It was so much harder than I thought it would be. Because, I thought I was good at it. Apparently, I wasn't. And so I had to learn to just sit in complete silence. I'm not saying anything. I'm quieting my heart. And I'm not sitting in silence because I want to hear from God. I'm sitting in silence because I want to be with God. And I want to be close to his heart. And I had to learn to just be present with God. I like this comment that says, be present in the presence. That's exactly what I had to learn. Just to be with God. No agenda, no expectation. If he speaks, that's really good. If he doesn't speak, that's okay, because actually the whole point was to hang out together. And I find that now that I practice that as a discipline, particularly in the times when I'm super busy, super stressed, where I feel like there's a lot of pressure around me. I'm responsible for the ministry teams in my church and for the prayer teams in my church, which means that I'm the first person receiving a lot of prayer requests, which can be disturbing sometimes. But I had to learn to just do everything from that place of closeness to the heart of God that I can only get to when I silence not just my voice, but also my thoughts and my heart noise, so that all I can feel is the heartbeat of God next to mine. And then from that place, then I can actually prophesy. Then I can actually pray. Then I know that I know whose I am and I know who I am. But I needed to relearn how to just be with God. And I feel like that's the invitation in this season, where during the pandemic, for a lot of people, it's been extremely stressful and anxiety inducing, but a number of people had found kind of space to create time with God, to create peace, like, pockets of peace in their lives and a deeper intimacy. And I don't know about you, but when we came back to whatever normal it is, it just accelerated really quickly. And I've lost a lot of the habits, a lot of the good habits that I had cultivated during the pandemic. And I believe that God is like, hey, you guys, this was a rehearsal. Like, we are not supposed to forget about everything that we learned in this season. We're supposed to bring it with us in the new season. I really believe that we need to rediscover the power of silence, because there is power in just being with God.
Yes, exactly. You're hitting it right on the head. It's about being, not so much about the doing. And like you said, COVID was kind of a forced reset, whether we wanted it or not. It was forced upon us, and we had the opportunity to participate in it at the level the Lord was giving us, right? Again, it always comes down to choice. But, for many of us, because things were closed and we couldn't even visit with people, so we were forced to have to learn to do life in a new way. Where we couldn't be face to face, like skin to skin. All of a sudden, then it was face to face through Zoom and technology, but also just learning to embrace silence, which silence is not an easy thing. I don't, for those of you that have ever been, in a service at church and you hit a moment where it's complete silence, that can feel like the longest minute or 5 minutes of your life, because it's like, what do we do? What do we do? And I know the Lord is wanting us to learn to just steward that place and let go of it being awkward and just building intimacy in that place. And I think so much of COVID, of what that taught us was the opportunity to learn that. And like you said, Irene, it wasn't just for that season, because as we were coming out of it and there's this whole new normal we're acclimatizing to, that we need to keep the things we learned. I think they're intentional tools that now we have to say, okay, how do I apply this in the now? It wasn't just, oh, here's 2 years, here's a gap. You're going to get to spend lots of time with me, and then life will pick up again and you can go back to your same old, same old. No. God is wanting us to take what we learned and make it very applicable, because that is going to be what's going to launch us forward. And we can't afford to forget or neglect those things. And just thinking, of Mary and Martha, right? Like, Martha was so caught up in the doing, and even what she was doing was not bad. It was not bad. She was in preparation for the Lord. And many of us are busy doing things for the kingdom. But we have to have that place of being before we can even do the doing. And there was that reset. I think so many of us had it backwards. And God was like, I love what you're doing for me. Maybe he didn't have any necessary complaints about it, but it was overriding the relationship because we lost our being, and we have to come back to being in him. Brian.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the silence and it's more of a quieting of everything, and I know sound is vibration, and when we're doing things and we're making things vibrate, and when we stop that, the Lord's vibration comes through, and he's the one that is, and it's a supernatural thing. That I think there's supernatural stuff happening in that silence that we're not aware of. And it's his vibration that's setting up a stage, doing something supernaturally that we don't understand and maybe can't grasp, but it's happening. It's like speaking in tongues, that's a vibration where we tune into the Lord's vibration. And this is a silence vibration where his vibration just takes over. And that's the way I look at it. There's something supernatural with his vibration that's going on.
Absolutely. And I think there's this resonance, right? Because if we're created in his image, there's this resonance that hits us, those vibrations that just meet us in the deepest places of our inner being. I'm just reading through some of the comments. There are some long, lengthy comments, and I think we're really hitting on something today about the silence, about the being. I think that, there's a theme that we can glean from this morning. And we prayed in the green room. We're like, Holy Spirit, we just want you to come, and we want you to land and you to highlight. So for this morning, I think the takeaway is, learning how to cultivate that silence and not allow it, the awkwardness to be that disadvantage where we delay getting to that place because it's uncomfortable. And yeah, like Irene, you mentioned, relationships, and those relationships where you can just be in somebody's presence and the pressure is off. You don't have to have the answer. You don't have to constantly be in conversation. You can just find that lull and you're good with it. It's like we can just enjoy each other's company because I'm comfortable. And I think that's, what the Lord wants from us. And I know the Lord loves to speak to us. There's gifts and things he loves to release and unveil through our treasure hunting, through going deeper and asking the questions of the Lord and finding those things. But then I think there's also something where the Lord is like, would you just come spend time with me? Would you just come sit and lean in and lay your head on my chest and just take in my nature, my presence, and just fragrance, get to know the fragrance of the Lord. What does he smell like, right? I think there's this whole thing of us needing to lean in and linger. Can we create a lifestyle where we can linger? And so if we can go back to some of the learned things that the Lord allowed us to glean through some hard years of isolation and carry those with us as gifts. They weren't punishment, actually. And it maybe felt like punishment because it was taking everything. Like we started off talking about leaving what's familiar and comfortable, and we want to go back to what's known because it's new and it's like, this doesn't feel good. But the Lord was wanting to teach us and train us in new things. And if we can take those things now, and even though they maybe are not, we're maybe not as versatile in them, and they maybe are not yet so comfortable, but to keep practicing them, they'll become our new normal, and we will get there, and we will cultivate that place of intimacy and go deeper and just spend time in the Lord's presence, not always with an agenda. What are you saying, God? What do I need to hear from you? What do I need to know? Those are all good questions. Nothing wrong with them. But can we come to the place where we can just be and just be okay with being? I think there's healing in that. There's power in that. There's so much there for the prophets to take away. Any closing words as we wind up this morning, either of you?
I'd just like to add like a few practical tips that I had to go through. One of the things is I understand, I saw in some comments that people are saying it's hard to silence your thoughts and everything, which is true. It takes process. I would just say that there's grace in the process. Like, we don't have to go from 0 to 100. It takes time. So when God started taking me into this journey of silence, I would go from 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 15 minutes. But also when those thoughts just like come in, it's okay to just look at them like a river flowing, and just like bring the thoughts back to the river. So you're still looking at the river, you're still practicing silence. There's a thought that's coming, just releasing it out, not feeling guilty or judgmental about it. It's okay. We have a brain, and it takes a while to kind of practice because it's new. So it takes a while. But actually, when you start practicing it, then you will realize that your silence is not dependent on the noise around you. It's just depending on the noise within you. And once you understand how to deal with the noise within you, then there's nothing that can stop you. So I would just like to encourage you, give yourself grace in the process, but take the time for the journey. It is worth it.
Yeah, so good, because you can still be silent around messiness and around lots of noise. You can learn to dial down and shut that out, because it's about the noise inside of us. I love that. I love that. You can make that separation from what's going on around you versus what's going on within you. And it's the within you that you have control of. You don't have control of the what's around you. Those are things with kind of the externals, not always within your scope of control, but internally, that's what we're responsible for. So very good words. Brian, anything you want to add to that before we say goodbye?
Just the silence, I think, because we're paying attention to the Lord, we're just soaking in Him. And I think that's somehow where we end up getting to get a view of the promised land, because we start soaking in His heart. We're not doing anything. We're just soaking up the brine like a pickle, we're just soaking His presence, and we take that flavor, and that flavor becomes who we are. And that's the promised land.
All right, you heard it from Brian. Get pickled. Jump in the juice and get yourself pickled. The soaking juice of God's presence. So great words of advice. All right, well, we have reached our time, and we are going to say goodbye. So just a reminder that Monday, join us for Awake in the Dawn, and go to the Invictus Prophetic Global Facebook page, find the details there, and sign up. And then we'll be back for another broadcast on Tuesday. So have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you again. And make sure to visit the website and check out the registrations for the school as well. All right, we hope to see you soon. Bye.